Yellow, not red, not green, yellow. Yellow is not stop, yellow is not go, yellow is pay attention, proceed with awareness. In the last video, we covered the red zone, the foods actively working against your menopausal body at the mechanism level. Today is different. Today we are talking about foods that are not poison, foods that are not inherently bad, but foods that modern life has normalized in quantities and forms that your body was never designed to handle. And to understand why, we need to go back, much further back than you might expect. Open any nutrition textbook. You will find a list of essential amino acid, nutrients your body cannot manufacture itself and must get from food. That is protein. You will find a list of essential fatty acids. Same principle. That is fat. Now look for the list of essential carbohydrates. It does not exist. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Your body does not require carbohydrate from food to survive. It manufactures the glucose it needs from protein and fat through a process called gluconeogenesis. It has always been able to do this. It was doing this long before agriculture existed. Strip away the science. Carbohydrates are not the enemy, but they are not essential, and after menopause, when insulin resistance is already elevated, understanding this changes how you make decisions at every meal. You are not depriving yourself when you reduce refined carbohydrates. You are removing the fuel that was keeping the fat cell door locked shut. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to unlearn. Majority of my life I grew up in Europe, but I was originally born in South Korea. Rice is not a side dish in South Korean culture. Rice is the meal. Everything else, the soup, the vegetables, the protein, is built around the rice. You eat rice at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, at least in the traditional days. It is not a choice. It is just how life works. And for most of my life, I thought this was healthy. Rice is natural. Rice is traditional. Rice has been eaten for thousands of years. How could it be a problem? Then I started studying food seriously, reading the science, reading the history, and slowly everything I thought I knew started to shift. Not because rice is poison. It is not. But because I began to understand what rice actually is in the context of my body after menopause, what it does to my blood sugar, what it does to my insulin, what it does when my hormonal system is no longer managing those spikes the way it used to. The food did not change, my body did, and my relationship with rice had to change with it. But this is true for anybody, any person living in Europe with pasta, bread, same thing with someone living in United States. That is what the yellow zone is, not a list of forbidden foods, a shift in understanding. Now I want to tell you something about grains that nobody in the nutrition world talks about. A grain is not food, not primarily, not from the grain's perspective. A grain is a seed. It is a plant's baby. Its entire purpose is to become another plant, to travel somewhere new, to germinate, to survive. Plants cannot run. They cannot fight. They cannot hide. So over millions of years, they develop something else, chemistry. Think about what a plant actually wants. A bird that eats a berry and flies 10 miles and deposits the seed in new soil, that is the relationship the plant designed. The seed travels, the seed survives, the plant spreads. But a bird that sits in a field and eats 10,000 seeds and never moves, that is the threat. That is what the plant is defending against. And this is exactly what humans are doing. So the grain protects itself, not with claws, not with speed, with toxins. So here you go. Phytic acid binds to minerals like zinc, calcium, iron, magnesium, so that the predator absorbs less nutrition and eventually loses interest. You eat the grain, but you do not fully benefit from it. The grain is withholding lectins, proteins that irritate the gut lining of anything eating too much. They bind to the intestinal wall. They pry open the tight junction between intestinal cells. They create permeability. The grain is not trying to nourish you. It is trying to make you stop eating it. The octopus dies protecting her eggs. She stops eating. She stops sleeping. She guards them until her last breath. The mother bear charges anything that comes near the cubs. The grain does the same thing with chemistry. It is not malicious. It is survival. Millions of years of evolution designed to protect the next generation. Michael Pollan in The Omnivore's Dilemma writes about this relationship between plants and the animals that eat them, the negotiation, the co-evolution, the fact that what looks like food to us is often a survival strategy for the plant. Yuval Noah Harari in Sapiens argues that the agricultural revolution was not a human triumph. In his words, the average farmer worked harder than the average forager and got a worse diet in return. But here's what is important to understand. Traditional cultures figured this out, not through science, through centuries of observations, through the accumulated wisdom of generations who noticed that certain preparations made grains safer. Sourdough fermentation, the long, slow fermentation process that breaks down phytic acid and partially neutralizes lectins. Real sourdough, not the supermarket version made in 2 hours with added yeast, but the kind that ferments for 24 hours to 48 hours, that process was not a recipe, it was a detoxification protocol. Nixtamalization, the ancient Mesoamerican process of soaking corn in an alkaline solution before grinding it. This process dramatically reduces harmful compounds and makes the nutrients in corn actually bioavailable. The civilizations that skipped this step and just ate the corn directly developed pellagra, a devastating nutritional deficiency disease. The process was not optional, it was survival knowledge. Modern industrial food processing skips all of that. The grain goes from field to factory to your plate in hours. The phytic acid is still there. The lectins are still there. The preparation that neutralized them is gone. We kept the grain. We threw away the wisdom. Grains only entered the human diet when we settled, when we stopped moving and started farming, approximately 10,000 years ago. Before that, for the vast majority of human evolutionary history, we were hunters. We were gatherers. We ate meat, fish, eggs, roots, berries, leaves. These are exactly the menopausal rewire food that I highly recommend. On top of that, we moved constantly. Our diet was extraordinarily varied. 10,000 years of agriculture. In evolutionary terms, that is yesterday. Your genome is essentially identical to the genome of a human who lived 100,000 years ago. That human never saw a wheat field, never ate a bowl of pasta, never started the day with a bowl of processed cereal. Your body has not fully adapted, and after menopause, when insulin resistance is already elevated and inflammation is already higher, the volume of gains that modern life considers completely normal is a conversation your body was never designed to have at this frequency. And I want to be specific about why this matters more after menopause. Estrogen was doing something most people never knew about. It was helping regulate your body's response to lectins and phytic acid. It was supporting the gut lining integrity that these compounds attack. It was keeping inflammation low enough that the low-grade irritation from grains stayed below the threshold where you felt it. When estrogen drops, the threshold drops with it. The same bowl of pasta that felt completely fine at 35 may now be contributing to bloating, joint inflammation, brain fog, and disrupted sleep, not because the pasta changed, because the buffer that was protecting you from it is gone. I never knew I had severe intolerance to lactose, fructose until I was 43 after surgical menopause. The breath test results that took hours each was very clear. How can someone go more than 40 years without knowing they have a food intolerance? The answer is that estrogen had been keeping the low-level inflammation in check until my estrogen levels dropped after surgical menopause. This is biology. It is just running without the protection it used to have. So what does this mean practically? This is why it is yellow zone, not never eat the grains again, not pasta is poison, not throw away your rice. Yellow means proceed with awareness. If you are going to eat grains, choose the preparation, real sourdough over commercial bread, soaked legumes over canned. Give the ancient wisdom its due. Reduce the volume. Modern portions of grains are not historical portions. A side of rice is not the same as rice as the base of every meal 3 times a day. Time it right. Yellow means not never. Just not like this, not this much, not this often, not without understanding what you are asking your body to process. One question worth answering before we close. What is the difference between the refined flour in the red zone and the grains in the yellow zone? Refined flour is a grain that has been stripped of everything useful, the fiber, the nutrients, the germ, and pulverized into fine particles that your body absorbs almost identically to sugar. It has no nutritional value remaining. It is not food anymore. It is processed substance. That is why it is red. The grains in the yellow zone are different. Whole rice, whole oats, quinoa, legumes, these still contain fiber, nutrients, and structure. They are real food, ancient food, just food that your body was never designed to eat in the quantities more than life considers normal. That is why they are yellow, not poison, not forbidden. Proceed with awareness. Next, the green zone, the foods that are actually on your side, the ones that speak the language your body understands now. One wire fix, more to rewire, body rewired. This is not it, it's miswired, and we're fixing that together.